You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, episode number 205. Why do I continue making movies? Making movies is better than cleaning toilets. Klaus Kinski.
Broadcasting from a dark, windowless room in Hollywood when we really should be working on that next draft. It's the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast, showing you the craft and business of screenwriting while teaching you how to make your screenplay bulletproof. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by three categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie is going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. Today's show is also sponsored by Indie Film Hustle Pro, our private and growing community for filmmakers and screenwriters. It was created for film creatives like you to meet, network, and support each other, learn from film industry experts, and to get the answers to your burning questions and more. The journey in this business is rough. There is no guarantee to success, but your chances of reaching your goals dramatically improve when you find others who are on the same journey as you and you work together towards a common goal. That is why I put together IFH Pro. Inside, you'll get professional networking, private and safe spaces to discuss the film business, access to advanced tools and education, up-to-date education, exclusive content not available publicly, access to IFH Pro workshops, webinars, special guests, and so much more. If you want to check it out, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/pro. Well, guys, you are in for an insane treat today because we have on the show producer extraordinaire Courtney Lauren Penn. Now, Courtney is the producing partner in Renegade Entertainment with last week's guest, Thomas Jane. Now, I wanted to have her on the show to get into what it really takes to make an independent film in today's marketplace at the level that her and Thomas are working at. It is a sneak behind the curtain on how these movies get made, what she's looking for in projects, how you package these deals, how you deal with distributors, what her policy is with her distribution partners, and as far as outlooks and projections, and we get into all of it. This is a masterclass episode, guys. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Courtney Lauren Penn. I'd like to welcome to the show Courtney Lauren Penn. How are you doing, Courtney?
I'm great, Alex. Thank you for having me on the show. Been a big fan for a long time. So,
oh my God, thank you so much. That's extremely humbling. I always find it so insane when people of your magnitude and stature in the business say that to me, because I'm like, I don't know who's listening, but occasionally I'll get somebody who's like, oh, I've been listening forever. I'm like, what?
All of those that have done the hustle appreciate the indie film hustle. So
I appreciate you coming on. Your partner in crime and in your new company, Renegade Entertainment, came on last week, Mr. Thomas Jane, the incomparable Thomas Jane, which was an amazing conversation about his perspective on producing and bankable actors and all this kind of stuff. So today we want to get into the weeds about producing and working in the budget levels that you're working in and the kind of projects you're working with Tom and so on and so forth. But before we get into that, why in God's green earth did you want to jump into this business?
It's a great question. I was told not to for a really long time, which probably fueled my my drive to do so. I grew up on the East Coast and played chess, actually. So through chess, I met some really interesting filmmakers there's a really interesting camaraderie between the film and chess community, believe it or not. There's a lot of actors who play, a lot of directors. There's something about the discipline. And I got exposure in high school to a man named Josh Waitzkin, who was the subject of the movie. Oh, you know Josh?
I don't know him personally, but I know of him. Absolutely. He's a MMA or
tied for champion.
Oh no, I read his book. It's an amazing book.
Oh, the art of learning.
Oh, it's amazing. I love that book.
Okay. Yes, I got to read one of because he was a good friend of mine. So he sent me the early drafts when he was like penning it and all that stuff. But I met Josh, and I'm a huge fan of Tim Ferriss, and Tim and Josh are sort of very close. And their podcasts together are like they're some of the best, right?
Gold.
But, yeah. Completely. Josh lives full. Like he lives life, incomplete. But anyway, I met him, and I was probably 10 or 11. I was a young chess player, and I met him at the time when all the hoopla of searching Bobby Fischer was sort of happening. And I watched this film, and I'd already played chess, but what was so incredible about this movie was how if you play. And if you're in part of a family of chess players, or if you're around it and you know how familial the community requires you to be if you're a kid playing, it just got to the heart. And I think that screenplay and what that film accomplished felt so deeply powerful and emotive that I just remember thinking that this crossover was really, really powerful. And then what that film did for the chess world was so incredible and powerful. And then through that, I met my first mentor, Josh Waitzkin, and ultimately, played chess, always loved film and storytelling. And I started writing short stories, but I never imagined I would end up creatively sort of in the business. Then I went to school. They recruited me for chess. I got to go to school and play and all of that. And I was always writing. And then I ended up going to Wall Street and doing investment banking, mergers and acquisitions, which, transactionally speaking, very much like setting up and creating a film. Every film is a small business, as you know very well. You know this better than anyone. And so you're starting a business from scratch. You're ramping it up, and then you're selling it and parsing it off. And so it's sort of, it was very similar to this transactional understanding that I got from M&A. So in terms of the structured finance side, I kind of got a lot of understanding basics from my time in that world. And then I kind of followed my heart. I left banking and I went and studied film at NYU and broke the news to my parents. I wasn't going to go to medical school for an MD MBA. I was going to go pursue film. And I did. I didn't really know anyone in the business at all, and sort of just went and started learning about where the intersection between that creative process that happens over here and then the business side that I had, understood this entrepreneurial mindset of how, businesses start, run, and get sold. Where's that cross section? And I found independent film finance and started a little company, and eventually now we're here, full-fledged renegades.
So you jumped, but you also did a little acting along the way.
No.
You never did any acting? I saw in your IMDb. I saw you. You played some parts.
No. I mean, because we met Ron Howard through chess, and so Ron was gracious and super kind, and I became friendly with Bryce and Paige, and actually taught Paige chess on occasion. Okay. And he invited us out to the movie set for EdTV. And I was there sort of as a child. I was playing in a chess tournament nearby, and then the days off we'd be going to set with Ron. And it was a surreal experience as a kid, we were walking through the streets of San Francisco, and we have people opening their windows and shouting down to them and following us on the street. And it was the first time that I was walking with Woody Harrelson. It was Woody Harrelson and Brian Grazer and Ron and me. And I just remember this weird moment of, wow, this is what that's like. This is what, when you're no longer have a private life, that's right. What this is, and they were calling him by his name from the show. And I'm blanking on it right now. Ron, when he was a kid.
Opie.
Opie. They were calling Opie.
Opie, yeah.
You know, that's what they were doing. And he was so gracious, but I just remember it made a huge imprint. And what really was interesting is because Ron Howard to me was just this really nice guy who had this fascinating job. And he was so sensitive and gentle. And he allowed us to come into his editing room, and he would show us how he'd craft a scene and cut a scene. And the art of it was such a beautiful thing. And he was so humble about it. And I couldn't connect that, the cacophony of that public experience with the actual like art, how private the art form creation was. It was just, I'll never forget that experience. Anyway, Ron on that set was like, "Hey, Court, would you like to be in a scene?" So he put me in some scenes, and, I was background or whatever. And then, and then recently, I did a scene with my son at the end of a film, and my son and I, because I wanted to memorialize my son at such a young age in film. And Ryan Quanten, the star of this movie called Section 8 that is yet to come out, his entire journey is about the loss of his son. And so he gets into a bus at the end, and he sits in the back, and he sees a young mother and her son kiss, and it wraps his story in a bow. And it's really, sorry, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. It was really powerful. So
that's amazing.
That was just something I wanted to do for me and my son. So.
How you're fascinating. Your story is fascinating because you live in the world of chess, and I wish I could play chess at the level that Josh and you guys play.
Josh. Yeah, I was.
Josh. Okay, Josh, you, and then I'm somewhere on the floor. But I'm fascinated with it's one of my Searching for Bobby Fischer is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely adore. I've seen that movie 1,000 times. I'm obsessed with Bobby Fischer in general. I saw the documentaries. Oh my God. The Queen's Gambit. I love chess, and I love the idea of moving chess and thinking 50 steps ahead and all this kind of stuff. How did your training in chess help you navigate the sometimes treacherous world of filmmaking, of the film industry, especially coming from a female perspective, which is, not generally, especially in the female producer situation, there's not a lot of you. There are more now than there were before, but as you were coming up, I'm sure there wasn't many that you could speak to and talk to. And I've had a few on the show, but I could count them on one hand as they were coming up. It was a tough situation. So how did chess prepare you for that?
You know what? I think you kind of nailed it. There weren't that many women in chess. Now there are so many more, Right. So when I started playing, it was the early 90s. So I remember playing in Washington Square Park, as Josh did actually, and playing with the guys he used to play with, speed chess. And that's where I remember being this, young girl, and it was just, they would come around, all the guys in the park, and they would say, "This is this girl, she's playing, can she really play?" And, I started to do better and better, and I did win, but there was it wasn't the most common thing. And then I remember going to play in tournaments. I did play, scholastic and traditional tournaments. So I would play in New York at the Marshall Chess Club and the Manhattan Chess Club, and there were no women. There were no girls. There were about 3, and, you were always playing against men. And I think that was very similar to, investment banking was still pretty male dominated also. Right. Then when I was in it, I think I was the only woman banker at my small firm. It was a boutique firm of less than 15 people. I was the only, on the banking team. There was, and then going into film, same sort of idea. Now there are many, many more women, but I think that the preparation was just in the practice and the exposure and getting used to it and being judged for being, a woman, absolutely, or being, presumptions made, of course, and that works to your advantage or your disadvantage. It really does, in all spheres.
So by the time you got to the film business, you were old hat. Between finance, chess, you were old hat, like dealing with this situation.
Yeah, I was sort of accustomed to it, although There is a significantly more cutthroat, as you know.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
There's a more of a cutthroat world in film, unfortunately, and TV and entertainment, you know, in general. And so I think people are so much when they meet you, they're so anxious to put you into a category. Like
They have to put you in a box. They have to.
Immediately. Like they shake your hand and you're in this silo, and you know, they don't want to move you out of it. And that's one thing that's different, you know. In chess, if you beat, you know, an older male Russian master and you were at the tournament, you own, that was your accomplishment. People recognized it.
You know what's so funny? And please forgive me for dropping a name, but when I had Jason Blum on the show, Jason, it's revolutionized film finance, and his deal is obscene, and it's like how he got what he did. And he said that he still is not respected in town. Tyler Perry is still not respected for the insane things that he's done over in Georgia and built his career, because he's not in a box that makes sense to anybody. So there's no respect in many ways to these kind of people who have been able to do things completely outside the system and able to so you're right. And if they got to put you in like, okay, you're the girl producer. Okay, great. You're the Latino director. Great. You're they can't just keep it open. Why is that, you think?
I think that humans are predictability seeking machines. Mm-hmm. And I think there's because of the business's cutthroat mechanism, I think everyone went through it on their way up. So once they've reached a certain level, there's like this is how I was perceived. And so therefore I will continue on that to protect sort of my world I've carved out for myself. I think that's part of it. I've noticed a lot that there's a lot of earnestness that you come into this business with, and you recognize it in others. And over 15 years, you can recognize it maybe having become, a little bit more embittered, you can see that. And then that in turn causes, changes in behavior. And so you kind of have to keep that tension of, of keeping your eye on the prize, wanting to be productive, keeping good relationships, but also standing, being able to stand up for yourself. And so it's a constant tension. You know this. So
no, it's insane. It's like the pressure that is applied. The pressure you apply to yourself, first of all, is one thing. And you throw your own obstacles in front of yourself because of your own monkey brain and negative thoughts that you have in your own head. But then the business just pounds you. Like I was watching, I think it was Dave Chappelle, who was on the Actor Studio years ago. Oh,
that was a great Actor Studio.
Wasn't that amazing? And he's like, there are no weak people in our business. Like if I'm on this, if you're in this stage right now talking to you, James, there's nobody who's talking to you that's weak. And I was like, it's like, you know what? He's right, because to be able to achieve a certain level of success in this business, the amount of punches that you need to take. And even if you achieve success early in life, like look at Josh, he really was thrown into the spotlight at a very young age.
He did not like it.
I know. Yeah. Oh, he hated it. But yet there's still punches that come even at that level. I mean, you see child actors and people that start up, but I think that's the thing that a lot of filmmakers getting into the business and people trying to get into business, are not aware of the amount of punishment that you will have to endure to continue in this business. And the ones who endure the longest is not necessarily the most talented or the most moral or the nicest. It's really a question of how much can you endure. And I always use the Rocky Balboa quote from when he was talking to his son in Rocky Balboa. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And that's that's what this business is. It's like you're constantly getting punched. You're always being brought to your knees.
Oh, it was Joe Carnahan said it on your show. I think it's like running the gauntlet. Like, you think you're going to run that gauntlet and not catch some scars and marks? Like
exactly.
That he visually got it absolutely right.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love Joe.
I love Joe. One of my favorite films is The Gray, and one of the greats, right?
Oh, it's amazing. Amazing. Like what it's Liam Neeson with glass wrapped around his fist fighting a wolf. That's the pitch.
And Thomas was supposed to do that film, actually.
Was he?
Yes, wow. He was. He was supposed to play the role that I think Frank Grillo ended up playing. And it's like, that funny world. But anyway, I love Joe, and he's been in it and knows that. But you're right. And I think that you have to try to steel yourself. I know I like the measurements I'm always kind of taking is, okay, this terrible, thing happened, or a punch was thrown, to use your turn of phrase. And how are you going to let it impact you? Mm-hmm. And so I think that you have to be so aware of how you let it impact you. Like there's things, you never pay that stuff forward, you
shouldn't, and it's hard.
You can't. But I see people who that does happen, and you kind of, it's sad because you say, oh, when they entered the business, they had this earnestness, and now they've got caught up in the wounds of coming up,
Yeah, and that's what I do the show for, really, is to really let everybody know. Like I always say, most filmmakers don't even know they're in a ring, let alone in a fight. And then all of a sudden they just get punched out of nowhere, and they're like, where'd that punch come from? I thought we were in a nice, in a rosy field. I'm like, no.
Is most of your audience creative filmmakers, directors and writers? Are they finance producers?
Everybody. It's fascinating because in the business, and it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. It really is. It's so true. So as I've been making friends over the years, I find out who listens to me. So like like, oh, I'm a fan. I'm like, great. Ed Burns been listening to me for years. I'm like,
oh, really? Oh, that's so great.
I'm like, what?
They're great indie creators. Yeah.
So there's producers, there's financiers that reach out to me. There's distributors who reach out to me. So everybody from every aspect of the business either listens to the show or watches the show. There's a segment represented in it. So it's not specifically just creative. It's because we talk about creative, especially when we're talking to, certain directors about the craft and stuff, but really it's about the business, about how to succeed, how to break through your own imposter syndrome, which we all have. And, and listening to journeys of everybody. And I try to humanize these giants in the business. To like, when you're talking to Joe Carnahan and Joe tells me the story of how he left Mission Impossible 3. I'm like, what? And like, how'd that work out? And his whole story. And like, so it kind of humanizes him and lets everybody know what the realities of the business are. Cause I never got that. I had to learn it the hard way. My first book was based on me almost making a $20 million movie for the mafia when I was 26. So I have a lot of shrapnel along the way that I've picked up. And I wanted to, kind of give that information out to the audience. And, that's the reason I do it. So anyway, but let's go back on track. So when you're producing, what do you look for in a director? Because a lot of directors are delusional, and I was delusional as well. We think that we think that we're like, it's my genius. When are they going to recognize my genius? What are the traits that you look for in a director that you're going to help produce a film for?
Oh, let's see. It depends if you're talking about film or TV. Mm-hmm. So, luckily we're sort of in several, production categories. We're doing TV and streaming series, and then we're also doing, independent film, and we're in a few categories. So on the film side, on the TV side, it's interesting because you have this really interesting tension again between whether it's a showrunner who is known for being, an incredible director as a standalone, and then you work with, showrunners who can support sort of their vision, or it's the showrunner who is the whole thing, who sort of is in the writer's room, is also going to direct at least 2 of the 8 episodes, if it's 8, and is rotating with credit with the writers, and that's sort of like a completely different beast. So it really depends on the TV side, like where the investment from the intellectual property development's coming from, and I mean that creatively, not just financially. So we have a book that we've optioned from Stephen King that we're in development on, called From a Buick 8, and for us, looking for the partners to crack it, we actually sort of went for a tastemaker filmmaker he's a writer director, but he's happy to direct this more and let 2 really, really well-known writers write the whole thing. And so we approached it from, how are we going to approach the whole series? Do we want to find the one guy, the showrunner that certain network loves, and that he's going to take charge, ownership of the whole thing, and we're going to kind of be a part of that? Or are we going to piece this one together, which opens up the world of directors in a more open way? And so it's very specific to what the IP is and how you want it to live ultimately. On the film side, we get all kinds of packages that come to us. Sometimes the director's on a script and approaches us. Sometimes we're developing a script from the ground up. And then we're going to go look for a director. And that's quite a process, sometimes it happens very easily and quickly. And then sometimes you're still looking. There's a couple of projects that we've been looking for a year for the right creative partner as a director. And we're looking for someone, because not just genre, but also wants to get into the weeds and the trenches and wants to, make it at a certain budget level. And, and then so it is, I'd say that navigating that and finding the right director is one of the hardest parts of producing.
What advice do you wish someone would have given you about being a producer in Hollywood?
Ooh. Be skeptical.
Great advice.
Be skeptical, because I've had so many people offer to, help or say they were going to help, and the motivations, are not what you would hope that they are. And I mean this for men and women. This is a universal blanket truth. I also believe, and I believe in not becoming embittered, which takes hard work. So the work there is, I sort of employ the Tim Ferriss and Josh is like, they have a great conversation that I think was very helpful to me as a producer. Their conversation about Josh's trainer for his Thai push hands championships. I forgot his name, but he's a legend. He's like live streams his training sessions. And
it was not push hand. It's the other one. Oh God, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, he live streams his fights and his practices so his opponents can see all of his techniques.
Yes. And Tim says, I will help anyone. And I apologize, my cat's going to just sort of arrive here in my lap. I will help anyone and give them the tips that I wish I had when I was creating my 4-hour work week, when I was creating this. And I'll just give it, because if someone can hack it and do it better than me, I can maybe learn from them. So I think that being less precious, because you're going to meet so many people who are very precious. Mm-hmm. I think that if you try to fight to stay precious, I think you can lose yourself and become hardened. So I would say be healthily skeptical and don't worry about being precious, because there's a few straight facts, right? I mean, a film makes money if you make it for less than it. If you make it for less than what you're going to sell it for, like this isn't, it's not rocket science, but people act, so, like actors' values, like all of that information is actually quite accessible. So I've sort of always been an open book with my knowledge. And so I think that helps us all kind of get to a better place. So be skeptical of, what, be skeptical, healthily skeptical, heightened awareness. And then, don't be so focused on being precious.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, I find that interesting because in the film industry, there is that level of being precious with like, oh, I know something that you don't. And if I give it to you, you can overtake me kind of attitude. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Where the opposites happened to me. The second I started giving away all this information to people, doors started swinging open, and I get to talk to people like you now.
Isn't that interesting?
That I would have never, if I would have just been a filmmaker trying to hustle it out like everybody else was, and I just started trying knocking on your door, I met you at a party or something, it'd be so much more difficult to sit down to have a conversation with you. But yet now I can have a conversation and ask you any question I like about the business, any question I like about the business, and I benefit from it. And then I record it, and now the rest of the world that's listening gets the benefit from it as well. So I found that to be the complete opposite. It's like the more you give, the more you connect with people, the more you're able to help other people. Some of it's going to go off and be done. People are not going to be nice about, holding on to it or something like that. That's just human nature. But a lot of people will remember it and help you along the way and open doors for you.
And like you were saying earlier, the competitive advantage is like long-term tenacity, and so that's really the competitive advantage. It's sort of like, oh gosh, I don't want to bring up the trial, but Johnny Depp did say something really interesting the other day. He said, lies run a sprint, the truth runs a marathon. And I think that's brilliant. That's great, right?
Brilliant.
And that goes to so many things, right? Everything from, personal conduct to professional conduct. And I think that speaks to that openness, right? It's sort of like if you're willing and have the ability to like stick it out and kind of stay tenacious, and you're able to, the more I think you give, I really agree with you completely. The more that doors open, the more opportunity presents itself, and growth happens.
Now, we all have been on set, and the world feels like it's coming crashing down on you. You've lost location. The actor don't come out of the studio, out of his trailer. Financing, you can't pay the crew that way because the money didn't drop that you were promised that was going to drop. Whatever the scenario is, what was that worst day for you, and how did you overcome it?
The worst day. Let me think about this. I have to say, this was in post. My worst day was actually, it was a post-production issue, so that doesn't count.
That's fine. That could work. It's still costing money. There's still a problem.
Yeah. I came into a film early. So when I first came into the business, I was sort of helping rescue films that had already started going. And my first big opportunity was to go and help clear up help finish the production and help clean up a film that was already in bankruptcy. And because of my background in finance, the investor who I met, said, I really need help. I'm in over my head. This film and several others are in bankruptcy. Can you help me? And it still needs to be finished. And it was a film called Gala Walkers with Wesley Snipes. And Wes is actually a friend, and he is a terrific guy. And I just respect the heck out of him. He's a unlimited talent, and he's got a very, very peaceful soul. But in the making of that movie, he had to fly back for legal reasons most of the way through production to the United States. And that film was very compromised as a result of producers' poor conduct fiscally, the challenges there. It was pretty much everything that could go wrong on a movie set. I think the accountant died on set in production. I mean, yeah. And I mean, I came in after this all had happened, and this poor investor had millions of pounds invested in the film. And he said, I don't know what to do. And he said, I've entered it into a bankruptcy proceeding to help clear up chain of title. What can we do to maximize it? And I said, okay, well, let's talk it through. Let's look at the legal agreements. What does bankruptcy in the UK look like? So in the process of, cleaning all that up, we had to address the missing footage. We had to recut the film. We had to deal with existing sales and licensing agreements that were predicated upon the earlier producers and what they had papered. And it was, there were just some titanic mammoth issues that, I remember waking up one day and just thinking, this film is never going to see the light of day. And, we have to do the right thing for this main investor. And, ultimately sort of figured it out, started just making phone calls, looking at the paperwork, learning about contracts, got it resold to Lionsgate. It did it. But it was just, I remember there was just a cacophony of things that happened. Boom, 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 sort of all in a day. And
you got through it though. You go, okay, it's not going to look like how we expected, but there's always a solution. I mean, I've been involved in projects that, over, $2 million projects.
What was yours? I want to know.
I mean, well, my worst day was, almost making a movie for the mafia and, being stuck in that for a year and a half, and my production offices being in a racetrack and my life being threatened on a daily basis for about a year from a psychotic guy who was basically Joe Pesci from Goodfellas. So one day he's super like the funniest, wonderful guy in the world, and this bipolar. Next second, he's threatening me to throw me in a ditch. And that's all great. But then I get flown out to LA and I meet the biggest movie stars in the world, the biggest power players. I'm at the Chateau Marmont, I'm at the Ivy, I'm doing all this. Surviving that, being that close to your dream as 26.
26. Oh, wow. Okay.
26. So sitting across the desk from Batman, I actually met one of the actors who played Batman, and him telling you, I want to be in your movie. Do you want to sleep over tonight? Stay over at my house so we can work on the script. So when you're that close and then everything gets completely yanked away from you, the psychological trauma that it took me 2 years to get out of it. It literally, I almost went bankrupt. My whole life got destroyed. So that to me was the lowest point in my entire life. So that's the biggest, everything else pales in comparison to that experience. So I think that was also a way the universe was like, let's give him like the most ridiculous situation up front, because he's never going to run into something this bad again. And so for me, everything else is, I've had problems and I've been part of projects that have, fallen around, or the set gets flipped. Union flips it and they lose
that's
money.
happened.
Yeah, but then they lose their money and they have to wait a year and a half, 2 years looking for money to finish it. And the footage is on my hard drive and I'm doing all the post on it. And I'm like, there's some major stars in this movie. You guys can't find $100,000 to finish this damn thing. So like all sorts of crazy stories over the years. But yeah, that's there's no way of, I always tell people, when I wrote that book and it came out, I told people, if you want to know what's the source of the grizzled voice on the other end of this microphone, read the book and you'll understand.
Listen to what I sounded like when I was 26 and then hear me now.
I really used to talk like this, but then. So you talk a lot about, you came from the financing world. So financing is the alchemy of our business. It is turning brick to gold and turning lead to gold, excuse me. What advice, how do you approach financing? What is needed in today's world? Because financing 5 years ago, it's a lot different than financing in today's world, pre and post COVID, how the landscape has changed as far as who's buying, how much they're buying for, how much more competition there is. Is there as much money in finance available? Are there that many people jumping in, want to jump into film? Because the word is out. It's not the easiest ride for financiers sometimes, unless you know what you're doing, like yourself.
Right.
So how do you approach finance? And can you give any advice to the people listening?
Yeah, I think if, it depends if you are financing or if you're looking for financing. And I would say that if you're looking to finance, a track record doesn't necessarily, mean that there's a financial track record. So, you can have, a track record as a producer of a lot of credits, but, what with those films and how they look, in the financial waterfall might be different. Or on the other hand, you might, have done very well as a producer by helping investors find pieces of films and that have been brought a wonderful return, and it may not be the top tier credit on the movie. So, I mean, I know that, I had raised money, and we did like revolving credit of around, between 6 and 10 million of revolving sort of senior debt. And it was secured monies, and we did really well with that model while, this was in the post 2011 era. So before, again, the streamers came in, and film became, international sales were, deeply impacted by the advent of more upfront, just transactional buyouts from the streamers, and TV, purchasing prices fell internationally. And so, you were starting to deal with margins for sales that were just more and more compressed. So your financial models just looked different. And I think that if you're looking to raise money and you're looking to finance film in this current marketplace, I think you have to just be much more on the dime in terms of what the market is right now, because it is different from now than it was 3 months ago. And it's going to be very different at this upcoming Cannes than it will be in 3 months, because the pandemic really, really did impact things in a massive way. And so, people really didn't know what was going to happen to TV. Was there going to be any theatric at what point? So I think you have to be so much more nimble for each project, and you have to be able to just say, what, that film a few years ago would have been financed at 6 or 7 million, and today it's only 3 or 4. Can we really make this movie at that level? And if we can't, okay, what, we have to maybe rethink it. So I think flexibility, and I'm a big proponent of holding back domestic and not pre-selling domestic as much as you can nowadays, because I do find that if you know what your minimum sale is, so truly, if you are just have someone financing against a minimum sale, there is tremendous upside if you're working with trusted director, trusted filmmakers.
So let me ask you a question then. So I wanted to jump into distribution, because distribution is also another mythical field or minefield of situations. And I've talked about distribution ad nauseum on this show because it's the one place that most filmmakers get taken advantage of. Hollywood accounting, all of this kind of stuff. And there are good players out there, but in my experience, have discovered that there are more bad players or great players than there are good players in the space. And I try to warn filmmakers about what the marketplace is. And a lot of filmmakers come into the business today thinking it's 2005, and there's DVD pre-sales, and like those days are gone. And there's also the amount of competition that's out there for product.
Right.
I mean, there's just tens of thousands of features being thrown into the marketplace, some with major stars, good stars, others that will never see a dime come back. How do you navigate the distribution fields? And I'm assuming before you answer, I'm assuming you've been taken advantage of once or twice along the way.
Sure. I think, of course, I have never, ever, ever, ever provided a financial model to anyone for a project that involved any economics downstream of the initial MG for upfront sales. So I never, ever provided a model that promised, even back. never, not even that, but even when, I don't even model in what it looks like when, let's say, you're licensing the film for 7 years domestic, your return in 7 years could then be an additional X percent. Even though that is there, I don't even evaluate. I don't discount it. I don't even do that. For our purposes, budgeting is completely based off of just the upfront MG. Or if you're able to say, this is our minimum sale, we do believe you can sell it up to this.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Here's the minimum and here's the maximum. And I always recommend holding back domestic if you can. If you understand that that's truly your minimum, So
to explain it to people, so when you're saying that, because I know some people might be confused by that,
sure.
When you're saying the minimum, so let's say you made a movie for $1 million and, you have Thomas in it or something along, a bankable actor. Mm-hmm. And you go, okay, based on the cast that we have, the genre that we have, and the director and a couple other elements, we can forecast that in the marketplace, we'll get an MG at the low end, maybe a 1.5, high end, maybe 3. Mm-hmm. And that's an MG, which is a minimum guarantee. So that's upfront check that they're going to give you. Then everything that comes afterwards, which is, after they recoup that minimum guarantee, all the money that come afterwards, technically you're supposed to get a split of. But a lot of times Hollywood accounting makes it that it's almost impossible. So the game that the seasoned producers make now is like all the money you're ever going to make, generally speaking. There's exceptions. Generally speaking is the upfront cash. Anything after that, you will probably not see a dime until you get the movie back in, let's say, 7 years, and maybe you can license it at that point.
Yeah. And that's just for the financial model, and I just think that's the most straightforward way. And then anything else is a bonus. I mean, if we did, for Gala Walkers, we did actually get overages from Lionsgate. We did. I think it's the only film we've ever received overages for.
Wow.
That
says a lot. Yeah. That says a lot. Because you've made a few movies.
But we have 3 releasing this year. So, but I mean that they did provide, we did get overages from Lionsgate for Gala Walkers. And so, that was a happy surprise, but everything was based off of, so any modeling that we do now for sales and for financing, absolutely just based off of what I believe the true minimum. And we'll actually get that information. We have wonderful sales partners that are really trusted. We have our agency is wonderful. I love our team at Paradigm. And, so between them and our trusted sales partners that we work with, and the distributors who we actually, cultivated great relationships with some of the distributors that we, I've had a wonderful experience with Redbox. We did the last set of Isaac LeMay with Redbox, and their marketing department and the way they ran the release of that film. So impressed with them. They're doing another film right now that Thomas is in called Vendetta. It's been tremendous. So, I just, as you get more comfortable with certain distributors, I think too, there's just that, the ability to say, okay, we have a film that we're looking at doing. Where would you guys feel comfortable? This is the range. It helps you back into your model sort of more.
It's funny because I've heard Redbox is one of the best kept secrets in distribution. I've heard nothing but good things about them, and the deals that they give out, because they buy DVDs still.
I guess so. Yeah, that's right. The Redbox is actually.
So it's still old school DVD. So if you get a full buy, it's a nice chunk of change, for a smaller film. I
think that they're very fair with their valuations, because they, and so, we did our film with Machine Gun Kelly and Sam Worthington and Thomas and Heather Graham. I mean, just an incredible cast. Mm-hmm. And we shot that in the middle of the pandemic. I was just, they did such a great job with the placement of it and how they promoted it. And and like I said, which is going to be repeat business. I really, really enjoyed working with them. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed working with our other partners at Lionsgate and Saban, but just recently, I looking back at the last couple of years, I was, you know what it is too. I was appreciative because there's so much content, you know, in the world, so much that I think that it's really hard for all of these distributors to really even get their finger on the pulse of what's worth marketing and for how much and how long. And so, you know, in the old days, you know, executives would swear fealty to a project, right? And they'd shepherd it through and it was theirs, and they would make sure that it got the marketing that it deserved and get the biggest push. And, you know, sort of that was part of their commitment and their job. And so now you have, you know, executives at the big streamers and the big companies, they've got so many things that they've got in front of them. You know, it's overwhelming. And so, you know, it's when you see a company that has the capacity to focus marketing efforts behind, you know, a film that you really believe in, you know, it was really rewarding with Redbox.
And I think that's one of the things that a cast, a bankable star or a bankable cast does for a distribution company, because they'll go, well, we're going to put money behind Thomas's movie because we know Thomas is going to get X amount of, because he's Thomas, or it's Danny Trejo, or it's, you know, you can name a bunch of, you know, bankable stars. And they're like, we'll put money behind these names because at minimum, we know that people will recognize it. And it's a lower hanging fruit for the distributor, as opposed to the old school 90s way of like, let's take Slacker and put it out into the theaters and see what happens. And
what happens.
Yeah, the John Pearson times, you know, like all that kind of, you know, let's see what happens with this Clerks and this El Mariachi. Like those days are so gone that so many filmmakers still hold on to those days. And that's not the reality of where we are right now, which brings me to my next question. When you're putting together a package as a producer, not only how important is the cast, but can you express to the audience how invaluable it is depending on the budget? You're making $100,000 movie, you're a lot more free. You're making a $5 million movie, anything north of $1 million, you got to be very responsible with what you're doing. So cast is one way of it. It's one of the ways you hedge your bet. So can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, it's become harder and harder. You know, margins are just more and more compressed because of the amount of content and because of the impact of the pandemic to, you know, you used to be able to split rights and get great split rights deals in international territories that aren't necessarily there, you know, in the same way that they were. So, you know, you're much more beholden to understanding what you're putting, who and what you're bringing together in the package for a film. So, you know, you're thinking strategically for your casting as well as creatively. I mean, it was a huge boon to have someone of the musical caliber and presence internationally, Machine Gun Kelly and Last Son of Isaac LeMay. You know, he acts under the name Colson Baker, but you know, because of his overall brand and presence, it was a very different sort of, you know, it was an outside of the box casting decision, and he worked so well. You know, he nailed the part. He was phenomenal in the movie, but it wasn't what you would. It wasn't the first, you know, instinctual thought maybe for casting. And so I think that, you know, when you're saying, okay, I think you have to be much more strategic and think, you know, outside the box sometimes. That when you're looking to cast, to justify certain budgets, and also to think about other audiences and who transcends, you know, a certain box, if you will. You know, we're working with another in an upcoming project. I can't say yet; it hasn't been announced, but another musical icon who's also an actor, and you know, we're thrilled because she is a phenomenal actor, but she's also got this incredible presence on the international stage, and you know. It's a really interesting opportunity. So I think you've got to really just put things together and be a little bit mind bendy and how you approach it.
Now, you know, you've made a bunch of movies over the years, and many of them are in the, you know, the action genre. There's a lot of testosterone in some of these films.
Yes.
how I have to ask
I
this
love
for all
action
the,
movies.
I know, so I have to ask this for the female producers and directors listening. How do you navigate a testosterone heavy set production? Because I have to imagine it comes with a different set of challenges, let's say, than a normal scenario. And because I'm just like, that was the first thing I was so impressive about. I'm like, wow, she's made a lot of like action packed, like really testosterone filled movies. I would love to hear her stories and how she was able to do all of that and have fun doing it and being successful at it.
So much fun. I've always loved action films. I probably was always a little bit of a tomboy. But I think that like with anything, balance is wonderful. So when you have, this heightened energy on set, and you've got, horses and gunfire over here, and you've got, these incredible titans of talent over there. I do think that there's a wonderful, I think women are really good producers. Not that men are wonderful producers too, but I think women have that because they tend to be more mothering in some ways. And I think that they bring like maybe a level of like a little bit of softness, or there's something, or a good ear. I just try to be a good ear when there's a problem. So, there was one actor on a film who, just sort of, he was shooting some very intense scenes. And I don't know if it was part of his style, but he sort of became very aggressive and loud, and he did not want to come out of his trailer after that moment and left the set. And I think that if you can remove ego and remove impulse, and you can just try to connect to the person as to why in the moment this is happening, I think you can try to communicate. And I think that that's been really helpful on a number of the films I've been involved with, actually.
Now, can you tell me about your new project, Tropo?
Did you freeze?
No. Yeah. Can you tell me, are you there?
Sure. Oh, you're back. Sorry. Yeah. It froze.
No worries.
Okay.
No worries. So can you tell me about your new project with Thomas Jane Tropo as part of your new company, Renegade Entertainment?
Yes. So it's our first series, and we're so lucky and happy. It's going to be sort of one of the first releases for Amazon's Freevee brand, which was formerly IMDb TV. And so it's like a Bosch spinoff show, and Tropo are launching the retitled brand Freevee on May 20th. And it's been such an adventure because it came to us as a book and a draft of a pilot. And it was submitted to us a few years ago. And I read the draft of the pilot first. And I don't want to give there's an opening sequence to the show, which you've never seen in film before. A little bit a la Jaws, opening of Jaws. And I just remember being grabbed and reactive and responsive. And I read that pilot, and I called Thomas and I said, I'm going to read the book, but we need to look at the whole project because we haven't seen something like this before. And read the book. I think that night, did sit up all night reading it. It was called Crimson Lake by Candace Fox. And Candace is this incredible true crime writer. Well, true crime, but also fictional crime. And she used to write with James Patterson and co-author with him. And so she has this beautiful like metric and style of telling stories that's so direct, but just so great and raw and cool. And, it's a woman writing crime. I mean, she's just a great crime writer. And I fell in love with the story of Crimson Lake. And it's about this American who's been in Sydney. He's a former detective. He ends up joining the force there and ends up getting accused of a horrendous crime that he, didn't seemingly commit. And sort of similar to the world that we're living in now, where like if something is printed or stated on Twitter or the internet, or if someone prints something, it's just assumed to be true before, it's guilty until proven innocent now. And so we're seeing this play out right in front of us in many ways. And when I read this man's life was torn apart by an accusation and an arrest gone wrong. And then his life was destroyed. His marriage, he had a young daughter. His whole life falls apart, and he goes up to North Queensland to escape everything and maybe end it all. And that's where we meet him. And we meet him in this strange place with wild creatures where everybody goes to kind of hide away from whatever they're trying to get away from. And it played like a drama, like a true detective style sort of drama. And, having, seen so many genre pictures get made and being a part of that, to see this great drama that was given the time to play out over 8 episodes, and that we could come in and work with the writers. And
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Crack it and focus on Ted and Amanda, the woman who he meets, and they get into this mystery together up in Queensland. It was such a rare, really incredible experience, and really rare. And so we got into it with AGC Television, Stuart Ford's company, and a great group of executives there. And then Yolanda Romke was brought on to showrun, and Jocelyn Morehouse directed the opening pilot episode. And we shot it in Australia during wild lockdowns. And that was a whole experience in and of itself. And, posted very quickly. And here we are. It's sort of like a pinch yourself moment, if you will.
It's very jungle noir. In the
jungle noir.
That's a new term. Yeah. It's very jungle noir. It's brilliantly done, and I suggest everybody listening definitely check it out on Freevee. On Amazon. Just go on Amazon, look it up. You'll find it there.
It'll be on the banner.
It'll be on a big banner.
Prime. Yeah.
Now I have to ask you. I didn't get to ask Thomas this. How did you two get together and build Renegade Entertainment? Like, after talking to him and after talking to you, you guys have such different energies that I'm just curious how that meeting happened and how you've been able to build this up.
It's actually a great story. It actually speaks to what, if you're having a hard time in the business, what gravitational pull might keep you in it. So, I've gone through some really tough stuff in the business, like we all have. But Thomas, there are so few people who are completely who they represent themselves to be. And Thomas Jane is one of those rare people who is exactly who he is. And so I met him. It was really funny. I was working on a project, back in 2012, and it was a small film, horror movie. And they CC'd me on an email where they said, we're going to offer Thomas, we want him to come in and play the father in this horror movie just for a day. And then, I'll email him directly. And so they emailed him and they made the offer. And I think Thomas wrote back and, it's not for me. I don't want to play that kind of thing because I have a young daughter, and it was very personal to him, which I respected. It was about young children in the woods being terrorized. And he said, no, not for me. I have a young daughter. I can't do it. And so for some reason, I read this script, this Gothic Prohibition era action script, which we've been working on for a while. And God, when it finds the light, it's such an incredible action piece. It's like John Wick set in Prohibition era Chicago with an undead Al Capone. It's amazing. Anyway,
it's pretty awesome.
It's such a cool, it's just one of my favorite projects. So something about Thomas, I emailed it to him. And I said, TJ, I didn't call him TJ yet. I said, dear Thomas, we were part of this interaction over this other film that neither of us ended up doing. Would you be interested in looking at directing or looking at this film? It reminded me of The Punisher a little bit, the character. And he wrote back and he said, yeah, come over for tea and we'll talk about it at the house. And so, I've never met Thomas. So I said, okay, he's so direct this way. And usually, in the business, you, as a woman, you wouldn't say yes and go to anyone's house ever for a meeting.
I was about to say it didn't sound on paper. It's not going well.
No, exactly. This is the whole thing. I said, oh, I don't know him, so I got a friend of mine who had met with him before and said, he's really nice. I said, good, come with me. We'll go and we'll suss out this situation from the front door. So
if he shows up in a robe, not happening.
But I'm there with a tall man, who's
Sure.
right. So went, and the door's wide open. You hear like operatic music playing, and there's Thomas holding cups of tea. And
Amazing.
He's like, no, amazing. And come on in. And so, we sat down on his deck, my friend, myself and him, and we talked about the project. And, he was just so brilliant. He's an encyclopedia of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
He is the most sincere guy. I really, one of the most sincere people I've met in the business. And, so we started talking about that project, and, it left, just kept in touch via email about the project. And then we started talking about it more and more. And then he went off to shoot Predator, I think, something else. And while he was up there shooting Predators and then The Expanse, he and I would do phone calls and we'd break down, and everything was just about, he was so invested in getting the character right and the script right. And so was I. And he and I together rewrote the script over a year and a half. And it was like beat for beat. And we would just get into it. And it was like with the purest creative experiences I had in the business. And so ultimately, I'm running a little long on the story, but
it's all good.
Ultimately, when, ultimately in 2018, I ended up hospitalized for about 4.5 months when I was pregnant with my son, in a really difficult situation. And Thomas and I, while I was going through that really terrifying time of not knowing what was going to happen, and my son was born healthily and everything.
Thank God.
He was there through that, in the sense that he said, the projects we're working on, Court, they will wait. There is nothing more important than what you're doing. And the team at Paradigm said the same thing. And while I was there going through this really deeply personal, very difficult time, Thomas was just like, doesn't matter. We wait on all projects we've been talking about till this is all finished. Only that matters is this. And I'd never seen anyone really do that, like actually take, professional interests aside to respect something, and so that happened. And then while I was there in the hospital, a chaplain came in. I was going through this, and I had this chaplain come in, and I just started talking to them about life and many different things. And the chaplain sat back and said to me, character is revealed in a storm. And I said, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And I said, and I'm in my mind, I said, you never know who you're going to be on the other side of the storm or who's going to be with you. And so, when all of that resolved, we ended up creating a company called Renegade, the following year. And the IP that we had talked about previously became formally optioned and part of our company. And our logo is a horse who is fashioned from the thing that it is afraid of most. You go through the fire, and what happens if you become the fire? The character is revealed in the storm. And so Thomas and I, have that deep, long-standing kind of loyalty and trust that is really rare in the business.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. I was wondering what that logo was about. So thank you for sharing the story. Now I have a few questions I ask all of my guests.
Yes.
If you've listened to the show, you know what they are. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Director or producer?
Any filmmaker. Dealer's choice.
Stay curious, reach out to as many people as possible, and you will find the authentic person who does want to help you find your way. Don't stop.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
Sometimes people do not care who they hurt. And that can be one of the most profound disappointments, both professionally and personally. So
that's deep. That's a good, out of 600 plus episodes I've done, I've never heard that answer before. That was a very good answer. Very true though. Very, very true.
That goes that stay skeptical, but stay open.
Right. Because if you clock yourself off, you can't move forward.
Exactly.
But if you're too open, you're going to get a lot of punches that are going to come in. Lots and lots of them. Now, what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Oh, okay. I was looking forward to this one. All right. Well, I already gave you one. Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Obviously.
Casino Royale.
Oh, so good.
And actually Finding Neverland.
Johnny movie. Yes. That was
and Kate Winslet.
And that's right. Kate was in that as well. Or as my daughters call her, Rose.
Yeah, I really wanted to, Titanic. I mean, Gladiator and Titanic, and of course Star Wars are like my 3. Like they changed my life. But these were more character. I wanted, Finding Neverland never gets, a shout out, and it was such a beautifully crafted film.
And Casino Royale is the best James Bond movie ever made.
Ever made. Haggis, just that script. Oh my God.
And that's the thing about. And I always tell people, like, why is that the best one? Is because that's the one that he became vulnerable. He's not just a dude that sleeps with beautiful women and goes kills and saves the day. Like in all the other ones, there was no character development. He never arced. He never arced.
They gave the woman Eva Green. I mean,
so much.
She's the most complex, one of the most complex, women we've seen on screen, and that's what allowed him to become vulnerable. And it's funny, you said, the other night I felt I had this moment where I just needed to watch something that was made, 10 years ago, but Skyfall, that the making and the craftsmanship of that movie is so mind-blowing. And I had to go back and watch it just to remind myself like what, the craftsmanship is, because we're so busy chasing budgets down, you just wanted to go and it was, there's no all that fancy CGI. It just, God, it's Sam Mendes at his finest with just the most incredible production. So
when you give masters a really good set of brushes and a great canvas, they can do some amazing things. I mean, Ridley Scott, I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, anything he does, I watch.
Oh, Alien! You 3 movies. It's not fair to ask just 3.
Throw Blade Runner in there. I mean, there's Matrix in there, Fight Club. There's a bunch of them in there.
Oh, Fight Club
as well. But listen, Courtney, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor speaking to you. I hope that our conversation has helped a few filmmakers out there understand the business a little bit more. And thank you for the inspiration and for the films that you're making. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thanks so much for having us, and happy to answer questions anytime.
I want to thank Courtney so much for coming on the show and dropping her knowledge bombs on the tribe today. Thank you so much, Courtney. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, head over to the show notes at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv/205. And if you haven't already, please head over to screenwritingpodcast.com, subscribe, and leave a good review for the show. It truly helps us out a lot. Thank you again so much for listening, guys. As always, keep on writing, no matter what. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bulletproof Screenwriting Podcast at bulletproofscreenwriting.tv.